All right, we're about to jump into one of the most famous and maybe one of the most misunderstood stories ever told. But this isn't just a history lesson about a knight fighting windmills. We're here to really get to the heart of the man himself, Don Quixote de la Mancha.
So, let me just ask you something. Have you ever just looked at the world around you and felt like reality was a little disappointing? Maybe a bit too harsh or just plain boring? Well, about 400 years ago, a man felt that exact same way, and he made a pretty radical choice. If reality wasn't cutting it, he'd just invent his own.
To really understand the legend, we gotta meet the man first. So, who exactly was this guy before he became the world's most famous knight-errant?
Well, he was a man named Alonso Quijano. And he wasn't a king, he wasn't some great warrior. He was just an older gentleman, kind of poor, living in a dusty, forgotten part of Spain. But he had this one thing about him. He was absolutely obsessed with books about knights and chivalry. I mean, he read so many that eventually that line between the stories and his own life just completely dissolved.
So what does he do? He decides he's going to become one of those heroes. He basically makes a little to-do list for his transformation. First, he renames himself Don Quixote de la Mancha. Sounds good, right? Then he digs up some old rusty armor. For his horse, well, it's a skinny old thing, but in his eyes, it's a noble steed he names Rocinante. And finally, the most important step. He convinces a local farmer, a guy named Sancho Panza, to be his squire, promising him he'll make him the governor of an island. And boom, just like that, his new reality was up and running.
And here's where we get to the real heart of the story. Don Quixote doesn't just see the world a little differently. He is living inside a reality that only he can see. And, as you can imagine, that vision immediately starts clashing with the world around him.
And this, of course, leads to the most iconic scene in the entire book. You know it. Don Quixote sees a field of windmills, but to him, they're not windmills, no way. They are monstrous, arm-waving giants, and it is his duty to fight them. And you have to understand, for him, this isn't a simple mistake. It's a choice. It's a choice to see a world that needs a hero.
And this wasn't a one-time thing either. His commitment to his vision was absolute. Another time, he sees two giant clouds of dust in the distance, and he declares it's a massive battle between two legendary armies. The reality? Just two flocks of sheep heading towards each other. But for Don Quixote, the world had to be epic. It had to have meaning, even if he was the one who had to put it there.
But he's not alone on this crazy journey. He has Sancho Panza, his squire, who is basically our anchor to reality. So where Quixote sees a magnificent castle, Sancho just sees a rundown little inn. Where Quixote sees a grand adventure, Sancho sees the very real, very painful beatings they're about to get. This dynamic, the ultimate dreamer versus the ultimate pragmatist, that is the engine of the whole story.
All of this, naturally, leads us to a really crucial question. Is Don Quixote just mad? Is he crazy? Or is it possible that his so-called madness is actually a deeper kind of sanity, especially in a world that's maybe lost its own way?
You see, this book is so much more than just a comedy. It gets into these incredibly deep themes. It's all about that constant battle between our ideals and the cold, hard facts of reality. It makes you wonder if choosing to be mad is its own kind of freedom. It shows us how stories can literally change our lives. And when you get right down to it, it's a powerful defense of every dreamer out there, anyone who's ever dared to live by a different set of rules.
I think this really gets to the core message of the whole novel. It's like the author is telling us, hey, look, the world is tough. It can be cynical. It's full of windmills that will knock you down. But a life that's completely stripped of ideals, of dreams, of a little of that noble madness, well, that's a life that's barely being lived at all.
So why does a 400-year-old story still hit so hard today? I think it's because we all face our own giants. The world is still full of them. They just look a little different now.
Seriously, think about it for a second. What are the windmills in your life? What are those challenges that seem absolutely huge? The ones that other people tell you you're foolish to even try and take on?
Maybe your giant is that risky business idea that everyone says is going to fail. Or fighting for a social cause that feels like a hopeless, uphill battle. Maybe it's just defending your personal values when it would be so much easier to compromise. Or pouring your entire soul into a creative project that everyone else just calls impossible. These are our modern windmills.
And that brings us to the end of the story, and to its most powerful, and maybe its most human lesson. After all the struggles, the humiliations, that unwavering belief,
What did Don Quixote actually gain from it all?
The ending is, well, it's pretty bittersweet. On his deathbed, Don Quixote is suddenly cured. He renounces all of his adventures, says he's just Alonso Quijano again, and in that exact moment of so-called sanity, he dies. The implication is just heartbreaking. It was the dream, the madness, that was actually keeping him alive the whole time.
But here is the final beautiful twist. The person who really sums it all up is Sancho Panza, the ultimate pragmatist. After their entire journey, he's the one who finally sees the profound wisdom in what his master was doing. He realizes that what the whole world was calling madness was actually a deep understanding of what truly matters in life.
So the ultimate takeaway from this incredible story is actually pretty simple. It's worth it. It is worth fighting the giants, even when they're only windmills. It is worth holding on to your ideals, even if the world calls you a fool for it. Because a life without that dream is barely a life at all. The real question isn't whether you'll win, it's whether you're brave enough to charge.